Okay.
Anyone want to share?
I can share.
Put in
Hi, I'm Lucretia Burtz. I am new to gardening. I was a part of a trainer program at the Garfield Park Conservatory this past year. So I learned a little bit from there. But yeah.
Cool, welcome. I
can go next.
Go for it.
Robert Johnson, Chicago Groves Food Center for Urban Transformation, World at Large. You know, I would call it, I've been involved with either growing things, farming, restoration, for example. I've been doing the restoration project down at the Control Harbor for over 35 years. So Montrose and Rose, Monty and Rose is not by accident. My father was a builder and a farmer, but they do more large scale farming. I wouldn't call it gardening, so it's about it. And it's something that I do enjoy doing.
Robert, what is the restoration project again? Where is that?
It's at the dunes on Montrose Harbor.
Oh yeah.
It's down there if you
Forward.
go east on the lake Montrose. So yeah, I might be doing that restoration for more than 35 years actually.
Okay. Yeah.
The other thing part of that some of those original planting along the Ravenswood corridor. There was a woman, God, what's her name? Good friend of my wife. She started to do a lot of that growing also along the Ravenswood corridor from Grace. It was initially like a firehouse. So she started that whole process. So I was a part of that with her. So, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Thanks for sharing. Is anybody else interested in coming off mute and sharing their name and their gardening experience and where they're coming from today?
My name is Michelle Dishberg. I am a home gardener. I just started gardening like 2 years ago. And I'm my son is 3 years old in his school garden. And so I'm starting to get involved with their garden. It's just like pots in their playground, but they do some vegetables and things. And I just recently added a raised bed to my roof to grow some vegetables. I'm in Pilsen and also doing a lot of native plants in my garden in the backyard. So,
Yay. Sounds great.
Okay. I am very excited to be introducing Jeremy today. Jeremy is a Chicago-based gardener who believes gardens can be a meaningful space for healing and connection. For many years, he stretched out his green thumb with vegetables and herbs, and then he discovered the need for more background biodiversity. He replaced his front lawn with a pollinator garden and got lots of strange looks from his neighbors. He also received a lot of interest from friends and curious passersby. After acquiring a certificate in horticulture therapy from the Chicago Botanic Gardens, Jeremy started Wild World Gardens to share his love of gardening with others and to help them transform their landscapes into beautiful and beneficial ecosystems filled with food, medicine, and connections to local wildlife. He has worked with patients at Schwab Rehabilitation Center and students at Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center to combine therapeutic horticulture with creating habitat for struggling species, and he is convinced that gardens can heal and support the whole community of life. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy. Take it away, do your thing.
Cool, thanks so much. Hi everyone, thanks for hanging out during your lunch break or, during lunchtime with us. Thanks Elizabeth and Chicago Grows Food for putting this together and all that you do to uplift food justice and gardening in Chicago. It's really wonderful work that you're doing. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to be talking today, and it's going to be pretty casual since it's a small group. I do have a slideshow, but going to be talking about native plants and incorporating those into your edible gardens, or just combining them, or planting both. Kind of blurring the lines that separate those two worlds unnecessarily. So, we want to create as much biodiversity as possible, and I think that's a great way to do it. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's see here. We'll do, okay, cool. Everyone see that?
Looks great.
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, so like Elizabeth said, I run a gardening business entity. I don't know. I just play in the dirt all day with friends. So whatever that is, it's called Wild World Gardens. Started it kind of pre-pandemic as a little side job with my other main job, day job, and then went all in full time into this world in 2022. So this is our fourth year of really installing native plant gardens across in and around Chicago. We do a lot of, well, not a lot, but we do edible gardens as well. Some of my favorite projects are when we were able to do both. But the bulk of what we do is definitely like native plants. So today, yeah, we're going to be talking about, let me close this little screen here. Okay, perfect. Edibles and natives, how to incorporate native plants in your edible gardens, and what the benefits of doing that, really. So here's just some examples of stuff that we've done around communities around Chicago. A lot of the times we do like a native plant garden, and we'll kind of put it close to or around a raised vegetable bed. There's that one on the left. The one in the middle was like a condo out in Morton Grove, and we planted up this whole entryway with native plants, and then added just like herbs and pots of strawberries and other herbs and tomato plants and stuff throughout the native plant garden. And then we do a lot of rain gardens as well, for just to kind of help with mitigate flooding and rain control. And surround those with vegetable plants too. I always like to do a little spiel about why native plants, why they're so important. Illinois, as you might know, this used to be a prairie. And all these native plants existed here for long, long time. Now Illinois is about 0.01% prairie. So all of that prairie is pretty much gone. And so trying to kind of heal this wounded landscape and bring back a lot of these plants, which are very beneficial for our ecology and for the wildlife that depend on them. So why native plants? Soil health is very important. We all know about soil. Soil is life. Chicago Grows Food does a lot of wonderful workshops around soil with, for example, Dr. Akila Martin and Orrin Williams and company. So native plants really do help the soil health. They have those really deep roots that you can see in this picture here that enrich the soil, feed microbes, control erosion, and just improve the overall soil health, water holding capacity. So that's really beneficial to your vegetables as well. Water health. Like I said, we do a lot of rain gardens. So those deep roots that the native plants have, they absorb and filter water, remove pollutants for the inner waterways, slow down runoff, reduce floodwater and stormwater impacts, and they also keep water in the ground, which is very important. We don't want just all of our rainwater just washing off into the storm drain system. We want to keep that water in the ground as long as possible to rejuvenate and feed the soil and the plants. Air health. Native plants are pretty amazing at removing carbon from the air and sequestering it into the soil because of those deep roots. We've lost a lot of that as we've lost the prairie in this state. And turf grass just doesn't cut it like native plants do. So they help remove harmful contaminants from the air, water, and soil. And then kind of, why a lot of us come to this world, it's all about the pollinators, right? And encouraging and advocating and connecting to wildlife. So native plants obviously do this. Just like humans, the pollinators need food, water, shelter, and space to survive. Native plants provide this habitat and support the needs of butterflies, birds, bees, beetles, moths, flies, wasps, hummingbirds, and all sorts of other species. These animals have co-evolved with these plants. They have a very deep, complex, intricate relationship with these plants, very symbiotic, and the disappearance of one can signal the extinction of the other. So I'm super encouraged. Every year we've been doing this for the last 4 years. We've been getting more. There's just a lot of momentum around incorporating more native plants into people's front yards, backyards, parkways, balcony spaces, you name it. And I think a lot of people understand the need, to support these pollinators and all these other health benefits that these plants bring. So it's very encouraging, and I love that this movement is just getting stronger. I always like this graphic, or just this idea of each plant in your garden could be a lifeline for local wildlife. I mean, we love to plant for beauty and for the human eye and aesthetically, but it's also very important to plant for other species and to think about your garden as a lifeline for local wildlife. Here's some of those species that we love to have around, which not only, benefit the native plants or connect with the native plants, but also benefit our vegetables, our edible gardens too. So you got bumblebees, you got leafcutter bees, carpenter bees, swallowtail butterflies, the one in the middle there, the rusty patched bumblebee, which is super endangered. 87, I think probably 90% decline in the last 20 years now. Monarch caterpillars, hoverflies, ruby-throated hummingbirds, hummingbird moths, wasps, other moths, beetles, all sorts of insects and creatures that really depend on these plants, who we want to support and keep around. So many of these species are suffering. Their populations are declining due to climate change, pesticide use, disease, and habitat loss is the big one. We need to create habitat. This is a sign on the right that we put into almost pretty much everyone's garden when we do gardens, just to educate people what this is now. This is a pollinator habitat filled with native plants. It's going to provide food and shelter for the birds, butterflies, bees, and other pollinators. So we have all this land in the United States, most of it, a lot of it's residential. And if we could come together like this picture here, this is a suburb, I think, in Nebraska, Omaha. We did not do this. I just kind of stole this. But you can see at the bottom here, this amazing, diverse wildlife sanctuary amongst all this just endless turf grass lawn, which isn't supporting anything and it's just kind of boring and lame. So envision your property as one small piece of a giant puzzle, which when assembled has the potential to form a beautiful and beneficial ecological picture. No matter, what I like to tell people is no matter how big or small, you're making a difference by just transforming or converting a little bit of that, expanding that garden a little more and adding native plants. It makes a difference because all those pieces of the puzzle come together and you create connections, you create wildlife corridors and some beautiful things happening. So for example, prairie strips are becoming more popular in farmlands. Obviously to attract pollinators, to help to reduce the use of pesticides, herbicides, and to help the soil. So thinking about how this can help our edible gardens, like Elizabeth said, I kind of got into this world like many of us through growing tomatoes and peppers and, food crops in my backyard. And all that was great. Loved doing that. But then I started adding native plants kind of around my raised beds, just pretty much on the edges of the garden. And really like my food crop production increased a lot, fewer like unwanted pests. So a lot of great like beneficial reasons to incorporate these native plants into your edible gardens. And one of those reasons is the soil health, obviously. Those native plants hold the soil or help the soil to hold more water, which means less irrigation. Um, some of those roots die back. They add organic matter to the soil, which means less fertilizer. And some native plants like partridge pea, lead plant, purple prairie clover also fix nitrogen into the soil, which helps keep other plants healthy, especially those that take up a lot of nitrogen. Um, those veggies that do that. And then, of course, pollinators, pollinators, pollinators. Native plants attract a lot of pollinators. Your edible plants will thank you for this. Pollinators help to increase crop production. Many of our native bees in particular have specialist relationships with certain native plants. They visit a limited variety of plant species for both the pollen and nectar to feed their larvae, and they're very efficient pollinators. So for example, the squash bee, which you'll see on your squash, right, is a native bee, which has a specialized relationship with that squash, and is really the best pollinator for squash. So I always like this sign: if something is not eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. So don't really want all of our plants chomped down, but it's totally fine to have some buffet going on there, a little bit of chomping, a little bit of eating. So and then we're attracting beneficial insects and birds as our gardens are part of the ecosystem, or at least they should be. When you plant a garden, you're sending out an invitation to other species. You're guaranteed to have guests, right? Things are going to show up. Different insects. We're excited to have some of these guests. Monarch caterpillars on our milkweed, for example. Black swallowtails on carrots or dill or golden alexanders. Ladybugs. Wonderful. Who doesn't love a ladybug? And their larvae are aphid-eating machines. So love ladybugs in the garden. Other guests we're not so thrilled about, right? Japanese beetles, squash bugs, aphids, slugs, cabbage loopers, grasshoppers, squash vine borers, which are the bane of my existence, cutworms, Colorado potato beetles, flea beetles. Not so happy about those in our garden, but it can be a little bit complicated, right? What we might consider a pest in some situations, this is the beauty of nature, right? Can also become an important part of our garden ecosystem. For example, the tomato hornworm at the top there, you might have seen this on your tomato plants. Usually you want to get it off right away, right? It's eating your tomato plants. But as that hornworm caterpillar morphs into the sphinx moth or the five-bodied moth, becomes a very beneficial pollinator. So maybe leave a couple, or don't. Your instinct might be to rip it off. Maybe that caterpillar is also going to feed some birds that are hanging out in your yard too. So we got to find a balance there. We need the unpopular guest to attract the beneficial guest, right? So here's a chickadee eating a cabbage looper. We don't want too much of one thing. A nice balance. And I think the more diversity and plant life we can put into the garden, the more we can kind of get to that balance. So some things to consider with native plants and edibles. Really, you're trying to plant for three groups when we're thinking about beneficial insects in the garden to help control the unwanted guests or pests. So we're planting for pollinators, right? Planting for predators and parasitizers. So one of the best methods for deterring unwanted creatures is to provide food and habitat for the species you do want. When you plant for beneficial bugs, you create a healthier ecosystem as a whole, and your garden will thank you. Pollinators. I already talked a lot about this, but it's so important, the work that they do. So these are the bees, butterflies, flies, moths, wasps, hummingbirds. A lot of people think of honeybees, right? Helping to pollinate, which they do. But they're actually not native European honeybees, and they're not as efficient or specialized as our native bees. Totally fine. Got no, not super against honeybees, but we want to think about our native bees as well, who are really efficient and specialized in their pollinating ability. So our native bees rely on native plants for food and habitat. So planting native pollinator plants will attract them. You'll ensure better pollination of your food plants, and some will eat the detrimental insects as well. So for example, hoverflies are really great pollinators, kind of really tiny, look like little tiny bees. And their larvae eat tons of aphids. So you can plant coreopsis or coneflowers or black-eyed Susans or even helianthus variety sunflowers to attract them, native sunflowers. So those are the pollinators. The predators, these are the ladybugs, the lacewings, the praying mantids, spiders, assassin bugs, soldier beetles. These are the ones we want to attract to eat the other bugs that we don't really want. And you want them in your garden. So for example, a ladybug larva on the left there can eat up to 40 aphids an hour. They look kind of creepy and crazy, but they will definitely help take care of your aphid problem. And you can attract them with pollinator plants like golden Alexander, butterfly milkweed, bee balm, goldenrod. So these are all plants that will bring in the predators to help control your unwanted guest problems. And then these crazy, just like sci-fi bugs, the parasitizers, the parasitic wasps, they lay their eggs on or in other bugs. Really kind of crazy and scary, and but pretty awesome. And their larvae feed on the host insects. So, for example, the braconide wasps lay their eggs on the tomato hornworm. Once the eggs hatch, the baby wasps chow down on the host, essentially like eat it from the inside. I believe it was the inspiration for the alien that comes out of the chest in the Alien movie. Was the parasitic wasp. So we can attract them with native plants like golden Alexander and goldenrod. And we'll kind of talk more about specific plants later on. Companion planting, you all probably, abide by this and believe in this, and it's super important. Obviously, you do a lot of this in the vegetable planting world, but we'll talk about companion planting for native plants and edibles as well. Kind of give you some ideas there. So plants need friends too, right? Grow plants together that benefit and support one another. Companion plants can help increase soil nutrients, encourage beneficial insects, deter unwanted wildlife, and support pollinators. They usually think like tomato and basil, or dill and cucumbers, or like a Three Sisters garden, corn, squash, beans. All great. Do that in my own backyard for sure. But then, I'll add some other like native plants close to there that will also kind of up that companionship a little bit more. Add another friend. Another thing to consider with native plants is think about seasonality. Native plants bloom obviously different times of the season, and so just like all of our plants. And so you want to make sure you have plants blooming from early spring through fall. The pollinators and beneficial insects and birds are active then, and they have different times of emergence, different times when they'll need that food and that habitat. And so you want to coordinate your native plants and flowering edible plants. So things that are going to bloom in spring when those overwintering insects are waking up, and when those monarchs are coming back from that migration, things that are blooming in summer, obviously, and then things that are blooming in fall, while those insects and butterflies are fueling up before the winter and before any migration. All very important to think about that seasonality, not just for like visual interest too, but obviously the benefits. So here's a longhorn bee on a coreopsis plant. And here's a beautiful green lacewing here. Think about like the structure, texture, and flowers and foliage of your plants. Plants from different families and plants of different heights, shapes, and sizes all have a variety of foliar and flower types. So for example, golden Alexander and Angelica have very tiny umbellifer flowers. They kind of look like those little like landing pads, the flowers, but each one of those landing pads is made up of hundreds of different flowers, thousands of different flowers. And they really attract and sustain those tinier pollinators, but also the parasitic wasps that we talked about. Plants with lacy foliage like Amsonia and Liatris attract lacewings and ladybugs. They can kind of like hide out in there and, you know, since they're predators, surprise and sneak attack their prey. Bunch grasses, the big prairie grasses like big bluestem, Indian grass. They feed and shelter the larvae of ground beetles, which then eat snails and slugs and other ground-based unwanted guests. So yeah, got to think about those ground insects too, and just think about the different structure and flower types that you're planting. And then, of course, we want to plant a diversity of plants. That's the whole point of this, right? So a monoculture, too much of any one thing, which is what we see in industrial, big, farming, just rows and rows of the same thing. It's just that's why there needs to be so many pesticides and herbicides and treatment, because it's just ripe for disease and destruction and more vulnerable to loss. So there's not enough biodiversity there. So not to mention it robs the soil of nutrients and harms beneficial bacteria and microorganisms. So biodiversity is key. The more diverse your garden is, the more resilient it will be. A diverse garden attracts a greater variety of insects and wildlife, which in turn creates a healthier garden ecosystem. The diverse garden creates habitat, supports beneficial wildlife, minimizes weeds, and improves soil. So when we plant our gardens, we plant very densely because we want to keep that moisture in the soil. We want to minimize weeds, and we want things to mingle and socialize, and all these plants to buddy up with one another like they do out in the wild, out in nature, which makes diseases less likely. A disease might attack one or two things, but if it's super dense and diverse, it can't take out the whole garden. So a diverse garden, a vibrant jungle of vegetables, herbs, fruits, and flowers is more fun and has more flavor. And also, I know Michelle, I think her name was talking about growing plants in pots and containers. Native plants work really well in pots and containers, especially in our small urban spaces. So you could add, we've done jobs where someone has an edible garden and we've added native plants in pots and containers around the edible garden. Or someone has a native plant garden and we've added pots of herbs and veggies, in and amongst and around the native plant garden. Whatever works for you. So grow herbs, tomatoes, strawberries in pots, place them within your native plant garden. You can incorporate, mix the two. But yeah, so works really well with pots and containers. Okay, so we're going to get into just some edible and native combinations that are nice companion plantings that kind of talk about like the insects they attract, and also some of the what is it, pest management, the natural pest management or beneficial pest management that occurs when you attract some of these insects with native plants. So for example, strawberries and lettuce. So we're going into fall here. You could plant some more lettuce into starting later this month into September. Cool season crop, right? Grows pretty fast. Some native plants that really go well with strawberries and lettuce is golden ragwort, also known as pachyra, does well in shade. Common cinquefoil, golden alexanders, which is in the carrot family, so is a host plant for swallowtail caterpillars. Beautiful yellow, that umbellifer flower. New Jersey tea and great angelica, which is a pretty tall plant. But if you don't mind having some height in your garden and around your garden, is a really beautiful native plant. So all of those, in combination with strawberries and or lettuce, they'll attract sort of small, medium-sized insects like carpenter bees. These are all native bees, right? So we want very specialized. So carpenter bees, mason bees, miner bees, hoverflies, those ladybugs and lacewings, predators, the parasitic wasps. And so that will help control aphids and leafhoppers and thrips in your veggie garden plus increased pollination too. So here we on the right, we have got a mason bee on a strawberry blossom there. And then some golden ragwort, that pachyera on the left. And a lot of these have the same timing, at least in the spring, for when the blooms come out. Another great combination. So some of us have raspberry patches or blackberry plants. You could pair those with some native plants like Jacob's ladder, smooth penstemon, which is also known as foxglove beard tongue, New Jersey tea, and then indigo bush. So like wild indigo or false indigo. There's a few varieties. Those plants will attract small, medium, and large size insects like bumblebees, sweat bees, carpenter bees, which then help with aphid and leafhopper control. So on the right there, you've got a sweat bee on a raspberry blossom. There's a picture of the false indigo bush, which is just a really beautiful, bush plant to incorporate into the garden. Okay. Talk about beans. I love growing beans. I love as much vertical gardening as possible. I have lots of trellises. I always encourage people to go up and not just out with their garden. So I love growing beans up on trellises along with cucumbers and even some squash. I think it's healthier for the plants, kind of gets some more air, light, and less disease. And so some plants that make kind of a good living mulch or ground cover around, beans and other vining plants is purple poppy mallow, common milkweed, which you got to be a little bit careful with because it can be a little bit aggressive, but obviously a host plant for monarch butterflies. Butterfly milkweed, lead plant, purple prairie clover, and wild bergamot. Those attract medium, large size insects like bumblebees, leafcutter bees, various butterflies, and then ladybugs, again, of course, which helps their larvae eat tons of aphids. So we want that. And aphids love to eat milkweed too. It's not going to really do much damage to the milkweed, but yeah, there's a balance there. And so those plants also, like the plants like lead plant and purple prairie clover, are in the legume family. So they'll actually fix nitrogen back into the soil from the atmosphere. So very beneficial plants, especially planting around veggies that might use up a lot of nitrogen during the growing season. You can put things like purple prairie clover or lead plant, even like wild indigo to fix nitrogen back into the soil. So there's a monarch on a scarlet runner bean on the right there, and there's a lead plant at the bottom. We're all kind of in tomato, pepper, eggplant season right now. All those squirrels keep taking all my tomatoes, but it's something I just kind of live with. It's a whole nother topic, how to deter squirrels. But so like to plant some of these legumes, nitrogen fixing plants like partridge pea and purple prairie clover and blue wild indigo and lead plant, close to or around tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Coneflowers are really great. Purple coneflower, pale purple coneflower. Wild bergamot again. Obedient plant, coreopsis, and asters are going to attract lots of great pollinators, which are going to help pollinate your tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. They attract bumblebees, carpenter bees, hoverflies, hawk moths, various butterflies, and once again, those parasitic wasps to help with the thrip and hornworm control. They got a bumblebee there on the right on a tomato flower, and then there's some purple prairie clover on the left there on the bottom. Purple prairie clover really likes it kind of like dry, not much moisture. So that would be a great candidate to put in a pot or container that you don't have to water as much as your tomato and pepper plants. So it doesn't get the same sort of moisture. It has different moisture requirements. So you could keep it a little drier while you're watering your tomato and pepper plants. Um, Thinking about squash, zucchini, cucumbers, and melons. Here's some native plants that pair well, companion well with these veggies and fruits. So partridge pea again, purple poppy, mallow, common sunflower, tall coreopsis, or any coreopsis, but the tall one, Coreopsis tripteris, gets about 6 feet tall. It's really beautiful prairie plant. Purple prairie clover, native thistle, common milkweed, butterfly milkweed, wild bergamot, lead plant, goldenrod. Like I said, they'll help attract some native insects like the squash bees that will help pollinate your squash blossoms. There's a longhorn bee on the native thistle. Um, Eastern carpenter bees, hoverflies, bumblebees, butterflies, ladybugs, for more of that sort of beneficial pest control. And then thinking about our cool season again coming up, maybe you're going to plant some lettuce or some more spinach or some radishes. That's usually what I do. Just seed those, and those companion plants that work really well with those veggies, those leafy greens and the radishes. Alliums are really great, and golden alexanders. The alliums can attract, medium, large size insects, sweat bees, leaf cutter bees, soldier beetles, which will help control the aphids and loopers. Golden alexanders, like we said, is a host plant for swallowtail caterpillars, and good companion plant for your lettuces and spinach and radishes. On the right, there's a digger bee on a radish flower, and there's a bee on a nodding wild onion, which is an allium, a native allium. And then also maybe you're planting some carrots and beets or kale and broccoli this fall. Um, Let your carrots and beets kind of even experience a little bit of a first frost to sort of sweeten the flavor. But they can go deep into the season, right? Especially as our season has not been as cold as it typically is. So some plants that pair well with those, wild strawberries, purple prairie clover again, to put that nitrogen back in the soil. Lead plant again, put that nitrogen back in the soil. They'll attract small, medium, large size insects like mining bees, sweat bees, caterpillars. There's our friend, the black swallowtail caterpillar on a carrot plant there. Um, you know, Pretty amazing how much they eat in a day, those caterpillars. And then if you try to raise them in like a little caterpillar contraption, the amount of like poop that they put out is insane. My kids are always like, "Oh my God, so much poop," but it's because all they do is eat. So yeah, so these are some plants that native plants you can plant around your carrots and beets and kale and broccoli. Um, you could actually get all of these into the ground. This fall is a great time to plant native plants, actually. Um, we do a lot of planting in fall. Kind of spring and fall are our big installation planting seasons. Fall is nice because the temperatures are a bit cooler. A little bit of a rainfall, so you don't have to water as much. Less weed pressure, so not as much weeding. Get the plants in the ground. They get nice and established and get a good head start before next year, and then they're up and running come next season, next spring, um, and providing all of these benefits that we've been talking about. So just a quick snapshot of like general native plants to consider for your vegetable garden. Planting in pots and containers, or just planting on the borders, or sort of weaving them throughout the garden. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but it's just really nice to add that companionship to all your veggies. So golden alexander, we talked about, blue wild indigo, smooth penstemon, partridge pea, which is actually a native annual, which grows really well just by seed. Um, just a pollinator like magnet. It's a beautiful plant, but it'll self seed and come back every year. So plant it once and it acts like a perennial. New Jersey tea, coreopsis, coneflowers, milkweeds, purple prairie clover, wild bergamot, which is in the mint family, or has a mint sort of smell to it. Great angelica, lead plant, and then asters and goldenrod, which are very important food sources for the fall pollinators, especially those monarchs gearing up for the big migration. And then, of course, some of our natives are edible as well, and like to incorporate those into the garden or in our landscape and take advantage of their edible uses or their, medicinal benefit. So, love. I'm a big proponent of edible native trees like serviceberry, which also known as Juneberry. Super delicious berries that the birds go gaga for. And if you can get them before the birds get them, they make great jams or just eating them right off the tree. A little bit like a tart blueberry. Pawpaws are native fruit. Pretty short, like growing, crop season, but super delicious fruit. Wild strawberry, black raspberry, wild currants, high bush blueberry, um, spice bush, which is a really wonderful woodland shade loving native shrub that you can use the berries in tea. Cone flowers, obviously, they're echinacea, so you can dry the leaves and the flowers for tea. Great angelica, which I mentioned a few times, also great for tea. Anise hyssop, kind of licorice smelling plant that you can dry the leaves for tea or use the seeds for baking, to kind of add that anise licorice flavor. And then wild bergamot, dried leaves for tea, and then goldenrod can also dry the flowers and the leaves for tea. So, um, thinking about like medicinal purposes, edible plants, healing ourselves, healing the environment, creating diversity in the garden. All these go hand in hand. What's good for us is good for the earth usually. So plant natives, plant edibles, plant natives with edibles. That's my big shout from the mountaintop, shout from the Chicago rooftops. Every garden deserves native plants, and that includes edible gardens. There's no reason not to grow them together. Mix it up, have fun. There's no need to separate them. Incorporate it, let them mingle, bring that diversity to your yard, and have lots of fun with it. And you can find me if you're looking for more information. I'm on Instagram at Wild World Gardens. Got a website, wildworldgardens.com. You can email me questions, your experiences, whatever. Contact me through there. And that's what I got.
Thanks, Jeremy. We had a question come in through the chat. Do you have any recommendations for trellises?
As far as like plants for trellises, native plants for trellises, is that what
No,
they're
the
asking?
actual trellises.
Oh,
I've got things that need to go up on trellises, but I
okay.
am looking for trellises.
One of my favorite trellises is a cattle panel. Do you know what those are?
Mm-hmm.
You got to go to like a farm and fleet store. And you got to like have a truck or have a friend with the truck and help you move it. But what are they usually 4 foot by 8 foot cattle
Mm-hmm.
panels? You could prop them lengthwise or heightwise, or what I usually do is I will make them into an archway between two garden beds.
Oh.
And then plant at the feet, and the vines will grow up the cattle panel like on the archway.
Wow.
They're actually very affordable. It's just a matter of finding them and moving them. And then you just kind of sink them into the ground with T-posts, so those like metal
Okay. Yep.
to hold them. So that's one of my favorite trellises. It's like galvanized steel, so it'll last forever. And otherwise, I've used pallets, like untreated pallets. I've used I don't know, just like the lattice, like wood trellises, the iron trellises. I find a lot of my trellises in alleyways, like stuff that people has thrown out
Hey,
that have thrown out, and I'm like, that can make a good trellis. Um, yeah,
the hot tips coming in over here.
yeah, no, seriously, like, yeah, scour the alleyways, look for cattle panels. You're not going to find a cattle panel in the alleyway, but yeah, highly recommend those.
Cool.
And then,
Another question that came, go
oh,
ahead,
go on,
sorry.
go on.
Another question that came through the chat was, are there any native plants that can be used as ground cover?
Oh yeah, for sure. Wild strawberry, great ground cover. Grows pretty fast. Um, can take shade, can take sun. Obviously, has those. A lot of people think like there's the mock strawberry that you see everywhere, which is not the native strawberry. That kind of is like more weedy, right? But the wild strawberry, Fragaria virginiana, is yeah a great ground cover. Um, we go back to this Pacera. I don't know if you can see this anymore, but the golden ragwort that I
Oh, not
showed
yet.
you at the beginning to plant with strawberries and lettuce, golden ragwort, which is also golden groundsel. It's a great ground cover, um, especially in the spring. And yeah, I mean, it kind of just depends on how aggressive they want to get with the ground cover. A lot of things can be used as ground cover as long as they're planted densely. Um, Shade is a big, kind of obstacle, I feel like, in the city. We have a lot of trees, we have a lot of buildings, there's a lot of shade. We don't plant as many like straight up like prairies as I would love to because it's hard to find a full sun situation. So we do a lot of like shade gardens, partial shade. Um, and another great ground cover are sedges, the carex family, which is kind of like it's a cool season grass that is a beautiful living mulch. Kind of has like a grass type clumping structure. Um, and you plant a bunch of those, especially around the base of trees or in your parkway. And you've got a great ground cover, great living mulch that you don't have to really mow, and that will keep moisture in the ground and
How
will
do you
help.
spell that?
Uh,
Sedgwick?
Sedge, it's like edge with the S, sedge. So we have probably over 1,000 different native sedges in Illinois. So you could go down the sedge hole if you really wanted to. Um,
Okay.
but I would say some of the more common adaptable ones are oak sedge. Common oak sedge is really great. Um, or wood sedge. Common wood sedge is really great as well. And you should be able to find those not at Home Depot or any place like that, but at like garden centers, like actual like nursery garden centers. Um, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Martha, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say, I was super excited when I saw that you have Jeremy on today. And he actually designed my yard 3 years ago. And it is my
Martha.
happy place right now. I love it. Everything he's telling you is all true. I've got so many little bugs and fun insects and just a diversity in the yard. I love everything about it. So thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. Great to hear from you. Um, Martha she has a garden that is a great example of combining native and edible plants. Yeah. So yeah, like she said, 3 years ago, she went all in. And I'm happy to hear that.
Any other questions? Jeremy, do you advise starting
No
native plants
questions, but
from
thank you all.
seed?
This was super informative. I definitely will be planting more lettuce to attract some of those native some of those pests to kill off some of the pests I've been noticing. So thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Great information.
thank you.
I had a question. I wanted to know more about your services. I don't know if you just mentioned that, because I had kind of got disconnected for a minute.
It's fine. Yeah, so we do everything from design to installation, kind of depending on where are in the city, um, to maintenance as well. And yeah, you can just contact me either through the website wildworldgardens.com, or my email is Jeremy, Jeremy, at wildworldgardens.com. Just hit me up, questions, or whatever you're thinking. Yeah, would love to help.
Thanks.
Can't hear you, Elizabeth.
Oh man.
You were trying to read your lips.
I muted myself on my phone. Thank you so much for being here. If you all don't mind taking a second to fill out the survey I'm about to put in the chat, it just helps us keep these kind of topics going. We want to know what you want to know so that we can keep supporting you all on your gardening journey. As always, we will be continuing these conversations at Community Food Navigator. So if you are not a part of Community Food Navigator yet, please get on it. There's wonderful garden discussions, a really awesome community. So check that out. I'll put the link in the chat for that as well. And as always, email if you have questions. Jeremy is someone I regularly contact with questions. So feel free to let us know if you have questions, or email Jeremy directly. Yeah, Lucretia, go ahead.
On the form that you put, it says August, I think 13th. Should we just say, should we click that? Okay.
Oh yeah. This
Yes,
usually
thank you.
a week later, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I put all of the dates in, at the beginning of the year and didn't update it. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks
All
everyone.
right, Jeremy, have a great trip. Have fun camping.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks so much. Look at that. It's 1 o'clock. We nailed it.
Nailed it.